Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today we're looking at the Slugger. So this is a self-propelled cannon from GIJoe. Um, so as I switch over here, and I'm trying to find the right screen. Um, yeah, because I'm looking at a picture. All right. Okay. So the Slugger self-propelled cannon was first released in the as a boxed set here in the United States in 1984. It included the driver Thunder. Slugger was also sold in 1985 and was discontinued in 1986. Slugger without the driver was later available in 87 to 91 as a mail-in premium offer around 91. The mail order Slugger started appearing without the camouflage paint pattern. So, the Slugger has a 175 millimeter howitzer and a 30 caliber machine gun on it. Um, this was GI Joe's answer to, and I'll try to get the picture up here. Um, the U.S. Army's actual self-propelled artillery, um, which has always kind of fascinated me because I've said before, I'm sure of it, that I know I've said it to others. I got into, or I joined the Army because I think I watched too many episodes of GI Joe. Um, and then being in the Army and occasionally getting to, just walking around and seeing other things or whatever, I didn't realize how much actual stuff was in the Army that I actually saw in GI Joe. Um, Now the Slugger, that wasn't something that I had actually seen, but I did see um, the self-propelled artillery in that. So, um, but there are other things that I had seen in real life that I thought was only a GI Joe vehicle. Most namely, the bridge layer. I thought that was just purely a fictitious GI Joe comic book and cartoon made vehicle, but it is something in real life. So, sitting here saying here is something that is a GI Joe, but there is a real life uh, self-propelled artillery piece, and that is always kind of interesting here. Um, so as I'm kind of going through, because I look up on GIJoe because they have extra information that I don't think about, and then we can I can kind of bring it to you. There's a lot of people that collect this stuff, and they know more than I do at times. I am in no regard an expert, but it is fun to bring this stuff, and because I'm trying to bring this into like a Star Wars kind of game. Uh, there are things that come up in here that fascinate the dickens out of me. And one of them that I see here today is apparently there was a G.I. Joe Monopoly, and it looks like the Slugger was what they had used instead of the railroad because it's a $25 rent. And if you have two vehicles, then it's 50, three vehicles, 100, and four vehicles is 200. So that tells me that this was the railroad. Um, and then, of course, they had a um, little write up here, and it just says the Slugger is a mobile artillery unit capable of inflicting long range damage to anything that dares step in its path. It features a 175 millimeter howitzer and a mounted 30 caliber machine gun. The Slugger is nearly impossible to track. So, and it says mortgage for $100. Uh, it is interesting to see some of this stuff here. Uh, it's things that we don't typically think about, right? So, getting on to our stats that I have here today. Um, I can bring up the right one. Here we are. All right. So I did make this at a Walker scale. This is roughly 30 feet in length, and that actually comes from its blueprints. Has a crew of one, passengers of zero. Um, I gave it a cargo capacity of 80 kilograms. I'm sure it's got more than that because if it's self-propelled, and I think this was supposed to be auto-loading. So having only a um, single person piloting it, um, or for crew, I'm going to guess that it's an auto loading as well. So, a maneuverability of 1D, it's driving, maybe not the most maneuverable, uh, goes roughly about 40 miles per hour, which actually it sounds very slow, but that's not really that far off in a lot of regards. Um, I was mechanized infantry, so we had the Bradley. Now, the Bradleys were governed to make sure that they did not exceed about 30 to 35 miles per hour. So to sit here and say, yes, this is a vehicle that possibly could go faster, it does. It would most likely run with a governor on there to make sure it did not go past about the 40-mile-an-hour range. Body strength, I figured it would be a heavily armored vehicle, seeing that it has all that ammunition in there. So I gave it a 4D. Weapons, we have the 175 millimeters, so I gave it a Walker. It's all Walker scale. A fire control of 3D, a damage of 8D. Now the range here goes out to 4, then 12 kilometers, and then 36 kilometers. I know that there were some cannons, and I don't remember if this was one of them. Actually, why don't I switch over to? You don't get to see this, but um, on some of the blueprints and all that, they talk about some of the ranges, which is where I got some of this stuff from. So when you're wondering where I get it from, it is in part because some of these actually said how far out they went, and that's where I was kind of basing it. Went to GIJoe.com and I went through trying to find all the information I could just to make sure I was getting as much information from there to try and keep it as accurate as I could. Let's see here. It says here. So yeah, I went off of kilometers. It says it can go out to 35.2 miles away. Um, and keeping it into my game, I figured that was a little far out there in comparison, so I did drop that down a little bit. So I had 36 kilometers. Now we have a heavy repeating blaster, which is a personal scale, 30 caliber, which is what our servicemen and women, well, our servicemen really, for the most part, we didn't have very many female soldiers. We had female support personnel. Um, they may have been in the service, but they weren't active infantry and stuff like that. So I'm trying to say it in that regard. Um, they were using 30 caliber, um, and that's a heavy repeating blaster at a 5D damage. Now, if it's a repeating, maybe I should take it up to 6. I don't know, but it is at personal scale, and it's just the sights that are on the gun itself. So I'm just kind of leaving it at that. Um, it could be like a Browning machine gun or something like that, or whatever. However you want to view it, because a this isn't like it's Earth itself, but it is something much like Earth, being brought into like the Star Wars universe, and we have our GI Joe and like Cobra and whatever else. So it's just that whole thing. How do we really do this? How do we kind of figure this stuff out? I think this represents it pretty well. Um, like I said, maybe it could go up another, be a 6D instead of a 5D, seeing that it is a heavy repeating blaster. Um, I don't know. Let me know what you think. But this is what we have. An interesting piece of equipment here. It was never, I've said this many times. These are a lot of this stuff is stuff I was never going to get. Um, I had one friend that he had a couple of these. He had a couple more than I was ever going to have. I just had a couple figures. I think we had maybe. I know between me and my brothers, we had one X-wing, one TIE fighter, and I think that was pretty much it for getting bigger vehicles for any of this stuff. And my parents looking at it as, one is the same as the other, and they just didn't, they didn't look at it like myself as a child. Um, Bless their hearts. They tried to understand what we're talking about, and to them it was just gibberish. It's just a thingamajig. So, um, listening to us kids with all this stuff, but um, it is what it is. Um, but this is the vehicle. Very interesting, being a six-wheeled mobile artillery vehicle. And you can see how they had kind of done the headlights up, where it's got the sturdy wire over the headlights themselves. A very 1980s ish look, especially looking at headlights today because we have the LEDs today, so we can mold it into things, and how this all works out is all interesting, um, in comparison to what it was way back then. And again, if we're going to try and bring this stuff into today's world, how do we do this? What do we use? Um, because I see the army, and I think the Marine Corps maybe are starting to use UTVs to try and help get uh, infantry and lightly armored or lightly armored or mechanized units out to the battlefield, because we've been doing more desert warfare. How do you traverse all that desert? Um, it's just hard for the ground pounders, the regular infantry, to walk all that distance all the time. So having um, more mechanized vehicles and all that to get you from point A to point B a little faster and a little easier does make it a lot nicer. Um, so it is a completely different army from when I was in, um, and to come up with a fictitious army, and because we are looking at, this is all stuff from 40 years ago. How do we bring this into today's modern age is always going to be a question for anyone, and I worry about that a little bit when we come up, because we have a movie that's going to be coming in here soon. So even though this is, how do we really bring this all to light? How are they going to bring this to light? Now, I'm not trying to bash anyone. I know I've done some reviews here of the Acolyte. Um, we're bringing some of our modern garbage into it. Um, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But how do we really do this? Um, and I just mean garbage in a general sense. I'm not saying it's all garbage. There's good things we bring into this stuff. Um, Having different ideas, having different ways of doing things or whatever, trying to reimagine some of this stuff is good in a lot of regards. It's us old guys that grew up with this being this, and yeah, as much as we want it to stay in this form because this is what we remember, sometimes we do have to modernize it and make it a newer thing. So um, sometimes we rant about it, but it does have to be brought into a more modern version of what the world is, as much as we may or may not like it. So enough of my rant. It's another wonderful vehicle. Hope you like the stats that I keep coming up with for this stuff. Um, it's something that I did this out of my own enjoyment. Um, and here we are. So, hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next video.